Hello guys, my name is David and I'm the founder of a company called Superthread, which is a super fast issue tracker that's actually nice to use. And welcome to my devlog. In this devlog, I want to talk about a tension which you may find in companies between developers on one side and product managers on another, and how that was one of the main reasons why I started Superthread. So without further ado, let's get to it. So before I actually go ahead and talk about these types of situations, I'd just like to give you a little bit of a background on me and how that makes me qualified to talk about this kind of stuff. So I have been and still am a programmer. So the point of view from which I look at the world is from a programmer's point of view. And that still affects me, unfortunately. For example, even right now at Superthread, if I'm actually not doing any coding, I feel as if I'm not doing any work, which is completely and utterly wrong. I know that that's logically wrong, but that's the kind of emotional response that I have inside of me. And that happens to a lot of developers. When they see other people kind of doing stuff that's not programming, they kind of look at them and they think, these guys are not doing any work. So that's kind of my programmer side. However, since being a programmer, I have been a head of engineering, I've been a CTO, I've been a company owner, and most importantly, I've been a product manager in a reasonably sized company. So why do we have this kind of tension between product owners and product managers and developers on the other side? So I believe there are three reasons. The reason number one is that the developers say that a task is going to take this much, and developers kind of underestimate how long it's going to take, and product managers kind of also think that a task should take a certain amount of time. They're not familiar with how many frameworks developers have to deal with, how many unit tests they have to deal with. So the inevitable conflict arises because of not being able to estimate the amount of time a task takes. The second reason I would say is lack of communication. Now, it's easy to say lack of communication, but we need to understand why is there lack of communication. And I think, in my opinion at least, the reason why developers and product owners don't communicate too well is because the developers think that the product owners and managers are not doing any work. The product managers think that the developers should be able to do the task much faster because they used to be developers perhaps in the past, and that's the way they remember things themselves. And therefore, when they communicate, they don't really kind of try and go through things thoroughly and explain to each other, what's involved, how much stuff needs to be done. And for that reason, when you have a mismatch of what one expects and the other delivers, you have this kind of inevitable tension. And the third reason, and I think it's a very, very important reason, is the actual tools which developers and product managers use to kind of work on projects in a collaborative way. Now, in my experience, we used to use this kind of massive issue tracker and documentation software, and it was so complicated to use. Each time developers opened it up, they didn't really feel that they want to use it. And what you had happening, you had development teams kind of secretly going off and using other tools, or even tracking their tasks in Google Sheets or something like that, because the actual issue tracker itself was so terrible and kind of not delightful to use. So that's one thing. And second is for product managers themselves. We could never actually create a digital view of the actual current situation in a company. So we always struggle to kind of understand how well the project was progressing, how well things were going, and that was a massive, massive struggle. In fact, at one point we ended up creating a physical board which was kind of 2 meters tall and kind of 5 meters long, and even then we started running out of space because we just couldn't get that overview inside of the tool itself. And no one really wanted to use this tool because it was just so horrible and nasty to use. So if you have all of these things, like for example, people not being able to estimate how long the tasks are going to be, people not communicating with each other, and then you have this tool on top of that which exacerbates all of this, you end up with a situation where there's just kind of distrust and disrespect between the different groups. And I think that's why developers struggle to get on with product managers. Now, how do we solve this? I think a good way to begin solving this is by actually introducing decent tools that are going to give product managers really nice and simple overview of the actual overall situation inside of the company, and for developers to be able to use this tool in a very, very easy and intuitive way without the tool being in their way, and being able to use it in an agile rather than waterfall-y way. So far you have these kind of collaborative tools which actually introduce waterfall-y type situations inside of companies where you have these kind of, roadmaps and kind of one thing after the other needs to be finished. Even though they're kind of all trying to pretend to be agile, the actual tool is driving them into becoming a waterfall type organization. When you have that kind of one thing fails and then it's just a cascading effect and then everyone's unhappy and so on and so forth. So I think with SuperThread, one of the things I made sure was that it has no opinion on how you should organize yourself. In fact, it says, we can't organize you, only you can organize yourself. But at the least, we as a tool shouldn't be in your way of organizing yourself. That's why we kind of prioritized extreme and complete flexibility, so you can shape it to fit your organization. It needs to be really snappy and fast, so you don't have to wait for something to load when you click on it. And it needs to be extremely kind of delightful and nice to use. So when you open it up, you feel good and you want to do your day's work. So that's my stance on why developers don't get on with product managers. Tell me guys what you think. Leave a comment down below. We'd really find it interesting to see what you think. We may even learn something. And see you guys in our next video.